China Global Television Network.
West African envoys in Guinea to help restore stability more than a week after a military coup. The UN pledges $20 million in aid for Afghanistan as the country faces shortages of key supplies. And Nigeria sees one of its worst cholera outbreaks in years. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta, live in Nairobi. And for those of you joining us from across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. Let's take a look at other stories making headlines this hour. In business, Eskom's clean energy strategy hinges on clearing its $28 billion debt. And in sports, South Africa beat Sri Lanka by 9 wickets to win their second test of their T20 International Cricket match. Once again, welcome to Africa Live. Great to have you along with us for this hour. Let's begin. A delegation from the West African bloc, ECOWAS, has been in Guinea for mediation efforts following a military coup earlier this month. They met with coup leaders and said mediators have seen the deposed President Alpha Conde, who is in good health. Last week, ECOWAS suspended Guinea's membership in the 15-member bloc, but did not impose further sanctions. ECOWAS consultant Ken Ife says the bloc may send multiple delegations to negotiate with Guinea's coup leaders.
First mission is usually to go and find out if the president is still alive, the one that was overthrown, and then his officers, and then to know, what condition are they living under, and then maybe to demand that they be released unconditionally. So things like that's the beginning, and then after the mission comes back with a report, then they might escalate. They might now send a second mission to lay down conditions that you have to organize an election and get a new democratically elected. So you don't know what the conditions would be.
The UN also sent a representative to hold talks with Guinea's coup leader, Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya. UN Special Envoy for West Africa and the Sahel, Mohamed Anadif, visited the country on a one-day mission. He expressed the United Nations support of Guinea during what he termed as a difficult period. In addition to meeting with Colonel Doumbouya, Anadif also met with ousted President Alpha Conde. Following his meetings, he expressed optimism but recalled the importance of ensuring the rule of law and respect for human rights.
Frankly, from everything I have heard, I live with a feeling of optimism, but I still place a lot of hope in the consultations that will begin between the Guineans themselves, because whatever the international community will say or do, the fate of Guinea will depend on what the Guineans themselves have decided.
The UN says it will allocate $20 million to support humanitarian operations in Afghanistan. The funds aim to help the country avoid reaching the brink of economic collapse as the country is running out of key supplies like food and medicine. Zamaryalai Abbasin has more from Kabul.
The Taliban are facing much more challenges as they pledge to cooperate with any foreign aid to be distributed to the people of Afghanistan in this dire situation that millions of Afghan people are facing. Corruption and also security is something that was a problem in the past, and the Taliban now have to maintain security for the UN staff and also all the countries that are willing to send their aid workers to Afghanistan in order to help the people of Afghanistan in dire need. Poverty, the lack of job, unemployment, and many more challenges, including the natural disasters and drought in the country is a looming situation, and one can picture what's going on in this country. The Taliban have to coordinate all the issues with the foreign aid workers and the agencies, particularly the UN, and also They will work together with the foreign aid in the UN agencies in Afghanistan in order to prevent the further more looming economic and humanitarian crisis. But it's a continuous effort. It's not just for one time, and it has to be continued according to many experts in Afghanistan.
The 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly opens in New York on Tuesday. It kicks off nearly 3 weeks of meetings, including the high-level general debate attracting political leaders from across the world. COVID-19, climate change, and recent events in Afghanistan are expected to dominate the discussions, but the pandemic means the event will again be mostly virtual. Sarah Walton reports from New York.
For more than 3/4 of a century, the UN has brought together nations from across the globe to try to find solutions to the greatest problems facing mankind. For the 76th session, the General Assembly has adopted the theme of building resilience through hope to recover from COVID-19, rebuild sustainability, respond to the needs of the planet, respect the rights of people, and revitalise the United Nations. The Secretary-General set out what he believes are the most pressing issues.
The COVID-19 pandemic has taken more than 4 million lives, is still killing nearly 10,000 people every day, and is circling the globe while a handful of rich countries stockpile vaccines. Climate breakdown and nuclear war pose extreme risks to human life and to our planet, and it is difficult to conceive a more destabilizing invention than autonomous lethal weapons.
The high-level general debate featuring political leaders from around the world will begin on September 21st. And while a focus on COVID-19 and climate change is likely to dominate, recent events in Afghanistan will also attract scrutiny, particularly as Joe Biden is set to make his first speech to the UN as President of the United States.
Clearly, there will be references to Afghanistan, and I think we'll hear Western leaders in particular talk about the importance of human rights and, above all, women's rights in Afghanistan. But I don't think that leaders are going to be criticizing US policy. Most people will want to avoid this dominating the agenda here because they'd rather be focusing on more positive issues like cooperation on climate.
This year, who gets to speak will attract as much attention as what people say, with questions remaining over who will be granted credentials to represent Afghanistan and Myanmar during the debate. A number of side events are also due to take place, including New York City Climate Week, a food systems summit, and a high-level dialogue on energy. But the threat of COVID-19 means these events will be mostly virtual. While pre-pandemic General Assemblies attracted thousands of delegates, this year just 83 heads of state are expected to head to New York in person for the high-level debate. The US has encouraged member states to send pre-recorded video messages instead to stop the gathering from becoming a super-spreader event.
The speeches that happen in the General Assembly Hall occasionally make good TV, but that's actually not where the real work of the UN General Assembly happens. It happens in the hallways, it happens in the bilateral meetings, it happens in the corridors and whispered conversations, and none of that is going to happen this year as it didn't happen last year, and I think something is definitely lost in all of that.
Just like last year's General Assembly, this will be a much smaller event. The Secretary-General says nothing can replace face-to-face diplomacy, but that a mostly virtual gathering is now the best option available to global leaders to effectively discuss the dramatic challenges facing the world. Sarah Walton, CGTN, New York.
Tunisia's powerful labor union, the UGTT, is calling for the formation of a new parliament to debate changing the country's political system. This is an implicit rejection of any move by the president to propose changes directly via a referendum. President Kais Saied seized governing powers on July the 25th, citing an emergency clause in the Constitution. He dismissed the prime minister and suspended parliament, moves his political critics call a coup. Adnish Walshi reports.
The UGTT said that early elections would bring a new legislative institution. The Deputy Secretary General of the Labour Union urged for dialogue between the President and all political actors, as well as civil society organizations.
The Tunisian General Labour Union has supported the President's moves and decisions since July 25th because he listened to the Tunisian people's call for change and the fight against corruption. Now the country needs a clear roadmap and stable political institutions to implement urgent social and economic reforms. This will not happen without fresh elections before any system change. This will come after dialogue and should not be a unilateral decision.
President Kais Saied declared that he respects the constitution and that he works under legitimacy. The head of state added that he did not exclude making amendments to the text of the 2014 constitution.
I fully respect the constitution, but amendments can be brought to the text. Constitutions are not eternal, and that amendments can be brought to them to meet the Tunisian people's aspirations, as sovereignty is exercised by the people.
Constitutional law experts explained that Kais Saied decided to sack the Prime Minister, freeze Parliament, and left MPs immunity, but did not present a way forward.
Since the 25th of July, the President has delayed the appointment of a Prime Minister and did not present a concrete alternative to the parliamentary system. Therefore, the political parties have woken up and reorganized their ranks for the next phase, including elections. The labor union's call for fresh elections and dialogue shows that the civil society is expecting more from the president than just promises on the constitutional change.
The Tunisian president said that the government lineup will be announced as soon as possible, adding that he seeks to choose the right people. More than 90 political and civil society activists have signed a petition affirming their commitment to the 2014 constitution and rejecting any attempt to circumvent or violate it. Activists urge the head of state to return to the democratic process. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Let's head to Somalia, where a rift between the president and his prime minister continues. Closed-door talks on Friday and Saturday have failed to reconcile the two sides. The president and the PM have been feuding over the dismissal and appointment of key security officials. As CGTN's Joy Karuki Juma reports, it all began with the disappearance of a female intelligence agent.
In June, female spy Ikran Dakhlil disappeared under mysterious circumstances in Mogadishu. Local reports say she could have been abducted by Al-Shabaab operatives in the city and later killed.
On Ikran Dahlil's disappearance, which, as you may have heard, has attracted a lot of public interest, it is my principal position that credible investigation of this case is necessary, and that all obstructions to getting justice for Ikran and her family must be removed.
Prime Minister Roble had suspended the intelligence chief Fahad Yassin over his handling of the agent's disappearance. This touched off a political spat between President Mohamed Farmajo and the Prime Minister. President Farmajo declared the Prime Minister's move unconstitutional and went ahead to appoint a new head of intelligence without consulting the PM. The rift comes as the Horn of Africa nation gears up to organize polls that have been twice delayed.
I think there is always a concern when two important parties have a rift, and in particular as we're going towards the elections. But I believe that the discussions that we had with them today and those that they are having themselves look as though they will resolve those disputes and the elections will go ahead. We do impress upon them that it is important to resolve those as quickly as possible.
Prime Minister Roble told a UN delegation led by the UN Deputy Secretary General that the vote would go ahead as planned. Joy Kiruki Juma, CGTN.
Time now for a short break. Don't go far away because we'll be right back with more news stories. Here's what's ahead. Russian President Vladimir Putin meets allies Syrian President Bashar al-Assad in Moscow. Nigeria sees one of its worst cholera outbreaks in years.
The East China Sea, home of dream seekers, where China's hub for reform and opening up connects with the maritime Silk Road. Whether it's exploring the busiest seaport and trade zone, or witnessing how locals strive for a better life. Join CGTN's adventure, Tides of Change Part 2. A journey enchanted by a dynamic ocean and beyond.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself. If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back to Africa Live. Thanks for staying with us. Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett made his first official trip to Egypt on Monday. Accompanied by a senior security delegation, he met Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, the Chief General Intelligence, and the Foreign Minister. They discussed the Israeli-Palestinian conflict as well as others in the region. This was the first visit by an Israeli Prime Minister to Egypt in a decade. Here's Adel El-Mahroui with more.
After Cairo extended an invitation, Israel's Prime Minister Naftali Bennett made an unusual official visit to Egypt. Bennett's delegation included his national security advisor Eyal Haloto and the Israeli ambassador to Cairo. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi was accompanied by Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry and the head of General Intelligence Abbas Kamel.
We spoke frankly and courageously. We will still hold more talks for the sake of our two nations and the entire region. Egypt always seeks to achieve peace, stability, construction, and development. We talked about Gaza and the necessity for preserving peace and the ceasefire and the importance of supporting the economy in the Strip and improving the livelihoods of people in the West Bank and Gaza.
Egypt has been rallying international support and leading talks with the Israelis, the Palestinians, and Jordan to revive the frozen peace talks since 2014. Bennett's meeting is the latest heads of states gathering after Cairo hosted Palestinian President Abbas and Jordanian King Abdullah this month. The Egyptian presidential office says Sisi confirmed to Bennett his support for reaching comprehensive peace in the Middle East, beginning with a two-state solution for Palestine.
Egypt has an initiative that has been on hold for 3 months. It wants to host an international peace conference in Sharm el-Sheikh. It proposed the idea to the White House and they got the green light. Cairo also spoke to Russia and the International Quartet. Egypt believes that the timing is appropriate to invite the Israeli Prime Minister to make use of this international readiness to bring peace talks back to life.
This is the first official state visit by an Israeli premier to Egypt since 2011. When former President Mubarak met Prime Minister Netanyahu, also in Sinai's prime resort city, Sharm el-Sheikh. Sisi has met Netanyahu before. It was on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in New York. Egypt appears to be building upon the political momentum achieved since it brokered a ceasefire between Hamas and the Israelis in May. Since then, it led intensive talks to bring back the Palestinian crisis on top of the international community's agenda. Extending this rare invitation to the Israeli Prime Minister indicates how serious President Sisi is about ending this conflict. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Russian President Vladimir Putin says foreign forces deployed in Syria without a United Nations decision are a hindrance to the country's consolidation. Putin made the comment during a meeting with his Syrian counterpart Bashar al-Assad in Moscow on Monday. The Kremlin said Putin also congratulated Assad on winning the presidential election. Assad thanked Putin for sending humanitarian aid to Syria and curbing the spread of terrorism. Russian support has helped Assad regain nearly all the territory lost to rebels during the civil war that began in 2011. U.S. President Joe Biden is on a 3-state tour of America's West Coast. It is his first official visit to the region since taking office in January. Eddie's Tian San reports from Long Beach, California.
White House officials say the main reason for this trip is to support California's Gavin Newsom, who's facing a recall election on Tuesday. During the pandemic, they actually extended the timeline for collecting signatures in order to proceed with a recall election, and that suddenly became possible for some of the leaders from the Republican Party who sort of spearheaded this process. And here in Long Beach, Gavin Newsom, California's governor, is now holding his final campaign rally, and with the top Democrat, Joe Biden himself, coming all the way over to the West Coast. And mind you, this is his first trip to the West Coast, particularly for this reason, is quite telling. It just shows you how much these elections are important, not just for California, but for the whole Democratic Party. We're not just here to Long Beach to meet California's governor, but before this, he's made one stop in Boise, Idaho, and before that in Sacramento, in California's capital. In both of these places, he visited interagency fire centers in Sacramento. Very close to the city, there's the Calder fire still raging. It's one of the largest fires in California's history. Already destroyed hundreds of homes over there, continues to threaten many more. So Biden's main message with these other stops is essentially to tell people, to show how much climate change is taking a toll on the economy, on the infrastructure. That's the other reason why he's here. Other than supporting California's governor, he's also sort of preparing this groundwork to garner more support for his most significant legislative agenda, and that is to pass some $3.5 trillion of spending on his infrastructure plan.
Nigeria is seeing one of its worst cholera outbreaks in years. More than 2,300 people have died from suspected cases. The West African nation is struggling to deal with the impacts of the waterborne disease alongside the coronavirus pandemic. Nokotula Shabalala has more.
In Nigeria's capital Abuja, sewers next to water pipelines lay bare open in residential areas. It's a sight for sore eyes and a breeding ground for bacterial diseases like cholera. 4 weeks ago, Ese Umokoro's brother became seriously ill with the waterborne disease. But hospitals are full in Nigeria as the country faces a third wave of the coronavirus pandemic.
Okay, my experience is cholera. It was very difficult because that day I have to rush the guy to different hospitals and all rejected him. It was only one that accepted him because the rejection because one, they said he's terminated and they cannot put him with other patients because he can terminate, he can contact, other patients can contact the disease. So they're trying to prevent that situation. It was not easy. And going to the hospital, they have to separate him from other patients.
Since January, Nigeria has been struggling to contain the spread of the waterborne disease. According to the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, over 69,000 suspected cholera infections were recorded in September alone. Flooding and poor sanitation here have increased the risk of cholera transmission.
It is very important for us to go right into the deep reason why this issue, the epidemic, is ravaging. And you know those that had it, the women, the children, the underage. These are the people that you have problems, when it comes to cholera. The poor, the vulnerables, the people in the IDPs, the people that don't have means of livelihood, that are living $1 below $1 per day, the people that don't have access to safe drinking water.
Water experts have urgently called for government to strengthen water, sanitation and hygiene.
To look into the real cause of cholera, that is to provide basic water facility, provide basic sanitation facility, educate Nigerians on the need for them to have sanitation and hygiene facilities, talk to stakeholders that could partner in this direction.
Cholera is seasonal in Africa's most populous country. Only 14% of the 200 million population have access to safely managed drinking water supply services. Nokotula Shabalala, CGTN.
Burkina Faso authorities have rescued over 300 children from being trafficked, according to the latest government figures. They were rescued between January and March. The country's Minister for Humanitarian Action announced the efforts made at a press conference. The government says the children were being trafficked to work in agriculture, mines, or for domestic work. In 2020, the Ministry for Humanitarian Action says 2,318 children were saved from being trafficked.
In the first quarter of 2021, 374 children have already been rescued, according to data collected by the General Directorate of Family and Childhood. For some time now, this phenomenon affecting children has grown to worrying proportions in our country.
A lot more to get to on Africa Live. We've got your business segment coming up next. Here's a peek at the headlines. Coming up in business, Eskom's clean energy strategy hinges on clearing its $28 billion debt. And Nigeria approves the rollout of the 5G network in the country.
Taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Accra is my kind of city. That's because when I'm here, I feel like I'm back home in Lagos or Abidjan, which are two of the major cities I grew up in. Business in Africa is high risk. After about a decade covering business news on the continent, I've learned it's all about the high risk, but also the high returns and the high energy. You simply have to adjust in order to keep pace. When I started out as a journalist, my dream was to open people's minds to the different perspectives. From the CEO in the boardroom to the trader out in the street, we all have different stories. From Accra to Addis Ababa, from Cairo to Cape Town, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Here at CGTN, we realize that Africa is on the move, and it's moving fast, but we're moving right along with it. I'm Ucheo Koronkwo, and I'm a business anchor and reporter at CGTN.
Welcome back to Africa Live. I'm Richard Nta. Thanks for sticking with us. Zimbabwean industries are bracing for tough times as the country's energy utility begins implementing a load-shedding schedule that could see 12-hour-long blackouts. Farine Wakatuya has the details.
Zimbabwe's electricity transmission and distribution company says generation challenges at the Hwange thermal power plant and rehabilitation work to the Kariba Dam wall, where there is a hydropower plant, have caused an electricity shortfall, which it is trying to manage through these lengthy power cuts. Zimbabwe requires about 2,100 megawatts of electricity per day, but is only generating between 1,200 and 1,300. It relies on imports from neighboring South Africa and Mozambique to bridge the deficit. Businesses, industries and farms will not be spared from the latest rounds of power cuts and fear that it could scuttle their efforts to rebound from the COVID-19 crisis.
Technically, we remain in a different kind of lockdown, but the lockdown we're having now, it could be non-COVID related lockdown, which is electricity challenge. So that alone can tell you that we're in for a long haul as business, and it's impacting definitely in terms of our production, especially from the manufacturing side. But with power shortages, what it means therefore is shifts are limited, some of the costs are fixed and you can't avoid them, and that will eat onto the bottom line of most of the companies in the country.
Zimbabwe's long-running energy crisis has been worsened by aging power plants which often break down, and so new power projects are desperately needed to meet increasing demand. An upgrade of the main thermal power plant in Hwange, which will increase generation capacity by 600 megawatts, is currently underway. Several independent power producers have had their solar and mini hydropower projects approved. Major thermal power plants are also on the cards, but are long-term in nature and are only expected to start producing electricity in 2023. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
A cleaner energy strategy for South Africa's struggling power utility, Eskom, hinges on clearing $28 billion of debt. Its CEO, Andre de Ruyter, says this will create as many as 300,000 jobs in the process. Eskom supplies more than 90% of the nation's electricity, the bulk of it from coal, and emits more than 2/5 of the nation's greenhouse gases. De Ruyter wants to tap concessional loans from development finance institutions in order to cover renewable plants in exchange for accelerating the closure of some of its old polluting power stations. The power utility is considering investing $7 billion in renewable energy projects within the next 10 years. But given Eskom's history of losses, convincing financiers to avail funding may prove to be a difficult task. South Africa's alternative stock exchange, For Africa Exchange, is rebranding to become the Cape Town Stock Exchange. Now, this comes as the group relocates to a new head office in Cape Town. Angelo Coppola picks up that story.
There are 4 active stock exchanges operating in South Africa currently, all based in Johannesburg. That's set to change as 4AX moves to Cape Town.
I think there was a lot of confusion in the market. A lot of the alternate exchanges, including the JSE, had Altex. There was 4AX, A2X, ZARX, and Equity Express. I don't know what the infatuation with X, but I think it was confusing.
The brand differentiation is a concern, but investors and commentators have another problem.
I think they got bigger challenges. They got to get support from stockbrokers. They haven't got that. I, as an investor, can't trade on their platform because my broker doesn't offer it. That's a giant challenge. And I also think our market's overcrowded. 4 stock exchanges. We've got 4 of them.
The move is seen as an alignment with Cape Town's approach to digitalization.
They've got the same digital-first mindset we have. We do want to get closer to Silicon Cape. We are deliberately going out there targeting technology companies and companies with 100 million to 2 billion market cap. So very much growth sector in the economy. And we think the Cape Town gives us that opportunity.
Analysts say there's an opportunity for this move to work.
2 things that might work in their favor. Aiming at smaller companies. We've got the LTX exchange on the JSE. That was always their target. It did great around 06, 07 when it initially listed, but it sort of failed. Momentum's gone since then. The other one is perhaps debt. They got one of only 2 debt listing licenses in South Africa. Maybe they can get some traction, maybe with large corporate debts, SOEs and the like, but also maybe again in that sort of mid-sized, smaller business, debts of a couple of million, couple of tens of millions rather than billions. It's going to be tough.
With the move comes a change in direction and possibly bigger competition for the incumbent in the room, the JSE. It's good news for investors. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
The Nigerian government has approved the deployment of 5G network in the country. This follows a successful test run of the technology last year. The country's Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, Issa Pantami, says the 5G network is set to revitalize Nigeria's telecommunications sector. Our correspondent, Deji Badamosi, has more on the story.
The approval is coming 7 years after Nigeria adopted the 4G LTE spectrum and follows a series of public debates over the deployment of the 5G network. Telecommunications companies operating in the country can now effectively begin the process of deploying the technology across Nigeria.
It will open many opportunities economically, academically, educationally, and even in health sector. And it will also support our security institutions, particularly in areas where they need high quality services. So these are some of the benefits to be anticipated when 5th generation or 5G is deployed in Nigeria.
The deployment of the 5G network had been trailed by conspiracy theories and health concerns, but the government and ICT experts say after extensive research and consultations, they've come to the conclusion that the technology is safe to use and that all the conspiracy theories are unfounded.
International Telecommunications Union, that is ITU, which is an arm of the United Nations, and also World Health Organization, that is WHO, which is another arm of the United Nations. Both of them confirm that there is no any adverse health effect of 5G, and it has not been proven to be any harmful to our health. Most importantly, even its frequency and radiation is even lower than that of 4G and even lower than the televisions and microwave we have at home.
Nigeria, being the largest telecommunication market in Africa, cannot afford to be left behind. We already have 3 countries that are ahead of us in this space. So let's push this conspiracy theory aside. It's like as if you're saying that electricity should not be invented. So unless you want to go back to the dark ages, let's put that aside. So 5G is here to stay. What we need to do is to actually recognize that we as a country needs to utilize and leverage the technology to its maximum benefit.
ICT experts in the country are excited about the approval, saying consumers should brace up for data speeds that will be up to 100 times faster than the current 4G technology in use in the country.
Every other location where 5G is being deployed, we are going to have multiple applications coming up that will make use of this speed and enhances the businesses, the way people live, the way people work, and the way people play.
The government is optimistic the deployment of the 5G network will help speed up economic growth. It says a body known as the National Frequency Management Council would soon release spectrum to the Nigerian Communications Commission for the mobile network operators that meet the required conditions. Deji Badimosi, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
As Ghana's economy tries to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic, the government wants to bridge the unemployment gap among its youth. A 2-day job and career fair has been held in Accra to link unemployed youth to job vacancies within the private sector. CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rofai reports.
Jemima Boateng is at the job and career fair in Accra to search for employment. She graduated from the university 3 years ago. She says it's been difficult getting a job with her degree in accounting.
I've tried severally. The most funny thing about it is when you don't get feedback or response, especially when you apply online. There are some you go and then most of them, they even take money, especially if you are doing through an agency.
12% of Ghana's youth are unemployed. This job fair, organized by the Youth Employment Agency, hopes to bridge the unemployment gap.
More than 50 private companies are at this job fair to advertise vacancies. A platform has been created here for job seekers to go through live interviews with employers.
According to government data, more than 40,000 people in Ghana lost their jobs during the COVID-19 lockdown last year. As the country's economy tries to recover from the pandemic, employers want to now fill vacancies.
More of the job seekers need orientation in which field they should actually apply for. Because the challenges that we're having here is that when they come, they just need a job. So they're like open to all jobs without specifying which kind of job they want to actually do. So we find it very difficult placing people at a specific position.
This fair aims to link 3,000 unemployed youth to jobs within the private sector. The Youth Employment Agency says it will create other platforms to get more young people employed or help them create their own jobs.
We've realized that not everybody who came here will be employed. It's a fact. One is either the people are more than the vacancies available, or the requirement is higher than those who are here. But again, we agree that there are some young men and women who have wonderful ideas and have good business plans. So as part of our initiative, from next week, we also open a portal where young men and women who have business ideas can upload their plans there.
While Jemima Boateng has submitted her CVs to potential employers at this fair, she says she is uncertain she will get a job soon. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
Many businesses are struggling in Afghanistan amid fears the economy could collapse. But some small restaurant owners are hopeful businesses will soon improve. Abdelhadi Dariz reports from Kabul.
The power shift in Afghanistan has affected many aspects of local life. Kabul was famous for restaurants serving local and international cuisines. The impact was considerable in the first few days after the Taliban's takeover.
We used to sell 60 to 70 kilos of meat per day. Now that has dropped to 30 to 40 kilograms. We've lost half our business. Whenever we ask someone, they don't have money. Money is stuck in banks. There was no business in the first days of their new regime, but now it's a bit better.
The quality and prices of food in restaurants have been minimally impacted. The customers are satisfied with the services, but the overall economic situation and uncertainties don't allow many to dine out.
Prices are the same and so are the services. Everything is the same as before, only the market has slowed down a bit. Hopefully it gets better. Most people don't have a stable source of income, so they can't eat out and enjoy the company of family and friends.
Government officials, bank employees and NGO workers were the main customers at restaurants. Since the Taliban takeover, many of them have stopped going to their offices. Still, restaurant owners are hopeful that the situation will get back to normal once people get back to their jobs and banks start normal operations.
We still have 30% of our customers in front of our restaurant. There are banks, offices, and directorates. Their employees don't come here anymore. They are either at home or have left the country.
Local businesses are the backbone of metropolitan economies. Fear of an economic crisis in an uncertain future has cast a cloud over their operation. But the situation has gradually improved since the change of regime. Many are hopeful that a resumption of the overall economy will make things better. Abdelhadi Dariz, CGTN, Kabul, Afghanistan.
The news continues on Africa Live. We will see you on the other side of the break with more news stories. Here's what's ahead. 4th edition of Sculpt X, the largest annual sculpture fair, kicks off in South Africa.
Join us in global business and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Welcome back to Africa Live. We appreciate your company. The 4th edition of Sculpt X, the largest annual sculpture fair in South Africa, is underway in Johannesburg. With over 200 sculptures on show, the Sculpt X exhibition offers visitors a glimpse into the different artistic approaches being applied to sculptural works. CGTN's Yulisa Jamela has more.
A number of artists participating in this year's Sculpt X, South Africa's largest annual sculpture fair, are pushing the boundaries of sculpture in interesting ways. The Melrose Gallery director Craig Mark asserts that the materials the sculptures are fashioned from vary, as do the modes of expression. From figurative works to depicting the human body, the natural world, or the built environment to abstract works. This exhibition serves as a platform to showcase sculptures by emerging, mid-career and well-established sculptors who all show together. With over 200 works by over 90 sculptors displayed in different venues, Mark finds it difficult to highlight specific works.
There's so many special pieces, but we've got works by artists like Dr. Willie Bester, who's known as one of South Africa's foremost resistance artists, and that includes some very large, big pieces of his. Nta Baktau, who has created an installation within the Sandton City space, and that involves clay pieces hanging from the ceiling in an installation, which has a beautiful kind of mood to it. Chuma Maweni works in fired clay, oven-fired clay, and with showing 3 beautiful vessels of his. Andries Botha, one of his life-size elephants in leather and wood and iron. So there's a wide range of materials from crystal to wood to bronze to recyclable materials.
The exhibition also showcases unconventional works.
So somebody like Louis Charnoux has been exploring plant carbon resin, which looks like glass, and he's been celebrating the human form. So he's created these life-size sculptures out of what looks like glass, but you can place them indoor and outdoor. And they have this very unique way of interacting with their environment, because when you look at them, you see the background, the garden, the sea, or the property within which you place the work.
It's a fascinating mixture showcasing carving, casting, welding, and assembly of varying shapes of this visual art form.
So it's just a very interesting wide range, and that's one of the great things about Sculptex is we don't apply a very strict kind of curatorial strategy. So we keep it pretty wide because we want a lot of artists to get the opportunity to show.
Even global art lovers will have full access to this fair.
So this year we have uploaded everything, all images, information on every single one of the participating artists onto our website, created a section called Sculptex with a tag on the banner of our website, which people can then click on and actually read up on the artists.
The exhibition runs until the 24th of October. Yolisa Njamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
And we are not done just yet. Lots more to get to in sports, including South Africa beat Sri Lanka by 9 wickets to win their second test of their T20 International Cricket match.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Africa Live. Find your voice.